He spent 60 years in darkness. And the first thing he ever saw was joy. They pitied him in Bethany the way people pity a broken cart, not with cruelty, exactly, but with a kind of tired, reflexive sadness. Poor Elam. Poor blind Elam. The women said it when he passed. The children whispered it. Even the men who had known him since birth dropped their voices when he approached, as if his blindness were a wound that might reopen if they spoke too loudly near it. He had learned to hear pity before it opened its mouth. A held breath. A slight shift in the air. The way footsteps slowed when they recognized him. He hated it. Not them. But the feeling it left behind, the way it settled into him like dust into cloth, whispering, "You are less than what a man should be." So Elam had found something else. Something no one could pity him for, because no one could fully understand it. He made shapes from clay. There was one thing he had never touched in a face. Not once in 60 years of working. He knew grief, the collapsed shoulders, the open palms, the way sorrow lived in the corners of the mouth. He knew fear and hunger and the particular exhaustion of a man who has stopped expecting things to get better. He knew happiness, the squinting eyes and the open jaw of a child mid-laugh. But joy, the other kind. The kind that had nothing to do with what was happening around you. The kind that was not a response to anything but a presence unto itself. Every time he tried to make it, the clay came out empty. He had tried for 20 years. And in 20 years, his hands had never lied to him. Which meant only one thing. He had never felt it. It had started when he was 7. His mother had left a bowl of wet clay on the floor and Elam had found it with his bare foot and then, curious, with his hands. He sat there for 3 hours. Just feeling the way it yielded. The way it held the impression of his thumb. The way he could push and pull and coax it into something that had not existed before. By the time his mother came back, he had made a face. Not a perfect face, the nose was too wide, one eye sat lower than the other. But it was unmistakably a face, full of feeling, full of something that looked almost like sorrow. She asked, "Elam, who is this?" He said, without hesitation, "I don't know. But I could feel him." He grew older. The work grew stranger. He would sit outside the village gate and listen the weight of footsteps, the rhythm of breath, the way a man's voice changed when he was lying, the silence that came after grief. Then he would go home and press it all into clay. A widow weeping at the well became a kneeling figure, shoulders collapsed, hands open, palms up, offering something even inside the grief. Everyone who looked at it turned away quickly. It was too accurate. A Roman merchant passing through Bethany offered him real money for a soldier he had made, a figure standing straight, chest out, jaw set, but the hands curled inward, fingers pressing into the palms. Hiding something no one else could see. "Why won't you sell it?" the merchant asked. "Because you would hang it on your wall," Elam said. "And it is not a decoration." A rabbi from Jerusalem came once and stood a long time in silence. "How do you know what it looks like?" he said finally. "You have never seen a human face." Elam kept working. "Sight tells you the surface," he said. "Hands tell you the truth underneath." The rabbi left and did not return. The man from Galilee passed through Bethany on a Tuesday. Elam heard him before he arrived, not noise exactly, but a quality of air, a pressure, a density, an aliveness he had no name for. He was sitting at his usual place outside the gate, hands in the clay, working on a piece that was not coming right. The footsteps stopped in front of him. The crowd behind them thought they knew what was about to happen. They were wrong. "What are you making?" The voice was quiet, direct. It landed without weight, the way a question lands when the person asking it is genuinely curious and does not already know the answer. Elam kept his head down. I don't know yet. My hands haven't told me. A pause. Then, may I sit? No one asked Elam if they could sit. The asking itself was unusual enough that he moved slightly to one side without meaning to. The man sat in the dirt beside him. Close enough that Elam could feel the warmth of him. What do you make most? Faces. Why faces? Because every face is a story that hasn't been told yet. You can feel the whole life in it if you know how to listen. A longer pause. What can't you make? The man said. No one in that crowd understood what he was asking for. Elam's hands stopped. He did not answer for a while. There is something, he said finally. I have tried to make it for 20 years. And I cannot. Because I have never felt it. What is it? Joy, he said. Not happiness. The other kind. The kind that lives inside a person whether they are suffering or not. I can feel everything else in a face. I cannot feel that. He waited for the response. People always gave the gentle reassurance, the deflection, the pivot to something easier. The man said, would you like to? Elam turned his face toward the voice. Yes, he said. Very quietly. The man put his hands over Elam's eyes. The clay was still on Elam's fingers. His hands rested open in his lap, palms up the way he always held them when he was not working, because that was the position that felt most honest to him. The man's hands were warm. Not just body heat warm the way a room is warm when many people have lived and loved in it for a long time. A warmth that had history in it. Nothing happened. And then, it came in slowly, the way a note played very far away takes a moment to arrive and then arrives, and then keeps arriving. First, the outline of the man's hands against his face. Not felt. Seen. The shape of the fingers. Color, and he had no word yet for color, no framework for what was coming in, but something was arriving where nothing had ever arrived before. Then more. The sky. The pale enormous sky, the afternoon light laid across it, and he knew instantly, he did not know how, but he knew that this was what people meant when they said beautiful. Not a judgment. A recognition. A match between something in the world and something in himself that had been waiting without knowing it was waiting. Then the faces. He turned his head. The man's hands had come away now, gently, and he saw the crowd. 20, 30 people. Standing very still. He had felt these faces for 20 years. But he had not known about color, or the way light falls differently on old faces and young ones, or what it meant to have another person's eyes meet yours. He was shaking. He turned back to the man beside him. And this was the moment. This specific, unrepeatable moment. Because when he looked at the man's face, something happened in his hands. His fingers moved into the clay in his lap without instruction. Without intention. With only the response of a body trained for 60 years to translate what it received into shape. And for the first time in 20 years of trying, the joy came. Not just seen. Felt. Radiating off the man beside him the way heat radiates from stone that has been in the sun all day. Not a response to anything. A source. A light that came from inside and had been coming from inside for longer than any of them had been alive. His hands worked. The crowd watched in silence. When he stopped, he looked at what he had made. He had made a face. He always made faces. But this one was different from anything in 60 years of work. The other pieces were accurate. People recognized themselves in them and looked away. This one, people would not look away from. Because it was the kind of face that made you want to be better than you were. That made the pity and the cruelty and the small daily shabbiness of living feel like things that could be set down. Left at the side of the road. A face full of the kind of love that doesn't need you to deserve it. Elam held it in both hands. "This is you," he said. The man said nothing. He was smiling. "I have been making faces for 50 years, Elam said. And I never made the right one. I didn't know what was missing." He looked down at the clay. "My hands always told me the truth," he said. And for the first time they did not need to guess. They said he went to Jerusalem afterward. That he stood in the temple courts and told everyone who would listen. That some believed him and some didn't, which was the way of things, and had always been the way of things. They said he kept the face he made that afternoon for the rest of his life. Never sold it. Never gave it away. Years later, when he was very old and his hands had finally stiffened past the point of working, a young man came and asked him to describe the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. Elam sat for a long time without answering. He had seen 30 years of sunrises. The silver of the Galilean Sea at dawn. His sister's children grow. Grief and kindness and cruelty and love, all in their visible forms. But the most beautiful thing. A man's face, he said. The afternoon light was behind him. His hands smelled like dust from the road. He was sitting in the dirt beside me as if there was nowhere else he needed to be. And he looked at me, Elam said, the way no one had ever looked at me. Not with pity. Not with the careful kindness people give the blind. He paused. He looked at me the way you look at something you already love. That was the first thing I ever saw. And after 30 years it is still the best. He picked up a piece of clay. His hands remembered.